Whenever I talk to other collaborators of Joel and Ethan's, other actors, other crew members, many people that have collaborated with Joel and Ethan over the years, many of us started in the first three films, and it ruined us for life, for one thing, because it set a bar so high for what a film set is like and what a script can be and what a collaboration with the filmmakers can be, that often many of us are chasing that again and have chased it through our entire careers. But I think that part of what made Blood Simple happen was the audacity of it. It was purely audacious that they sat down, they wrote a script, raised the money, got a group of people together, and we all pulled it off. But I think that comes from their innate brilliance as storytellers. They knew that it was a really good calling card. People were going to see slashers, people were seeing horror films, they were great students of film noir. They knew that people were going to pay attention. When I moved to New York, I was sharing an apartment with another actor that I met at drama school. And his best friend from Chicago was living with Holly Hunter down the street, and we lived in the Bronx. And both my roommate and Holly Hunter had both auditioned for Blood Simple. And in fact, Joel and Ethan were very interested in casting Holly as Abby. But she had just gotten the big break of her career, which was taking over a role on Broadway. And she was going into a 6-month contract, and she said, "You'll wait for me." And they said, "No, well, we can't." "Yes, you can. You'll wait for me." Because as she is wont to do, she was very clear that they needed to wait for her. They couldn't wait for her. They started auditioning again, and I was lucky enough to get an audition because I wasn't really in the same position as Holly then. They were kind of a double-headed creation that was chain smoking nonstop. On the middle of the table was an ashtray the size of a soup bowl, full of butts. And I walked into this room that was full of smoke, and their faces kind of emerged. I smoked at the time, so I lit up. And I can't say they were formed as filmmakers, but they were formed as this kind of crazy, two-headed, chuckling, I don't even know what to call it. They were kind of like a circus show because they had already adapted this sound that they make that all of us that know them, hope to hear, and it's and when they both do it at the same time, even if you're in a very serious situation, even if you're doing a death scene on camera, you know that you've got it right. They liked what I did in the audition. They asked me to come back later that afternoon to read with John Getz, who had been cast. I said, "What time?" They said 2. I said, "I can't." Why not? Because my boyfriend at the time was having his first job on a soap opera. He had 2 lines. I wanted to watch it that afternoon. "Well, when could you come back?" says Joel. I said, "Around 4. He goes, "Great." And subsequently, they both told me that that's why one of the reasons I got the job, because I didn't seem like I needed it that much. And I have to say, the lesson I learned from that is going into auditions, don't be too needy and have an agenda of your own. I took that script home in between meeting them at maybe 9 o'clock in the morning and going back at 4, and I didn't know how to read it. I kept seeing POV. I didn't know what POV was. I didn't know that POV meant point of view, and there was a lot of POV in that script. And then there were scenes of me, stabbing a man's hand to a windowsill. I'm like going, oh, great. And there were scenes where it was clear that I had just had sex with my lover, and so that to me meant, oh, I'm gonna have to do nude scenes. So as a first opportunity, as a young, 24-year-old actress just out of drama school, it wasn't exactly the thing I thought would be the best thing to do. So I called Joel, I asked to speak with him, he called me back, and I said, okay, I just need to be clear about what's being expected of me. Do you see this as a nude scene? And he said, no, absolutely not. If that bothers you, don't worry about it. We're not selling this movie on sex. We're selling this movie through the violence. We're not selling this movie with sex. We're selling this movie with violence. That somehow relieved my fears.
He's in the house.
What's the matter?
Could have sworn I heard something.
Door's locked. There's nothing there.
Well, I guess we wouldn't have heard anything if it'd been him. He's real careful. Fact is, it ain't all right.
I have a generic Southern accent. It tends to be just your general hick accent, which Abby was. She was not an educated person. She was not a well-traveled person, a well-read person. She was a very simple woman. And so I lived as a child in Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Southern Illinois. I have kind of that at my disposal. When I think back on it, Joel and Ethan's experience of women was not that vast at that time. And I think that actually there's a caricaturish aspect to Abby. She wasn't that three-dimensional. And weirdly, even though I was very unformed at the time, I look at my face, there was hardly anything to latch on to. But I think the one thing that I've always been able to offer them is a complexity that fills out an idea they have of something. It's not that she was a blank slate, but it was kind of the surface, and then whatever I had to bring to the table, or whatever questions I asked on the set, or whatever my relationship was with John Getz and the other actors, somehow made her more. I also think that I was really naive, and not only naive of the process of making films, but naive in general as a young woman. So I think that that was a choice that they made in casting me that also helped to tell their story in a different way.
You want the bed or the couch?
Well, couch will be all right.
You can sleep on the bed if you want.
I'm not gonna put you out of your bed.
Wouldn't be putting me out.
An interesting part of the process of developing Abby, though, with Joel and Ethan was the costumes.
Okay.
They had hired a young woman in Austin who had had some experience, I think, with commercials. They had absolutely no budget. They budgeted maybe had $200 for costumes. So she had made a deal with the woman who owned the store where she bought her clothes to borrow some clothes for Abby's character. She was a very petite woman. Well, I'm not a petite girl. So none of these clothes really worked. So we were kind of scrambling at the last minute to get costumes. I wore some of the costumes of Jean Black, who was the makeup and hair department. Jean Black was the entire department. I showed up in a gray jumpsuit that Joel really liked, and he said, I think you should wear that in the movie. I wear that in the movie. You know, it was kind of me, but me and enhanced me. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I didn't know what it was, but I trusted them. A friend of mine from college, after he saw the film, he wrote me a letter and said, I was so impressed with the choice that you made of standing there with your mouth slightly opened. And I said, that was not a choice. I was terrified of being too theatrical, constantly. So I would just stand there and try not to move. And then Joel and Ethan would say, move over there, and I would move over there and go, I'm trying not to be too theatrical. Because I was afraid that my face was always going to be going like that.
What do you mean?
I know about it, Abby. I went to the bar last night.
What happened? Was Mary there?
Yeah. He didn't see me, though. Nobody saw me. Is it cold in here?
Well, what happened?
Clean it all up. That ain't important.
I thought because I had no training in film, I just thought keep it immobile and listen. Which in fact, keeping your face immobile is not the right way to think about it. But listening to your fellow actor on film is still the best advice for any film actor. If you really listen and you're listening to someone who's interesting to listen to, that's all you have to do. There was nobody that didn't have more experience than me on Blood Simple. I couldn't do anything but learn. And something that I learned then and take to every film set now is that I stay on the set. They could not afford to have people who they call stand-ins. So they hire someone to stand in your place on a film set while they're lighting so that they say if you have to change a costume or you need to take a break or for whatever reason the principal actor can't be there, they have someone that is about your height, your coloring, so that the DP can light around you. I like doing that because I find out more and more about the craft of filmmaking by being there. I see how I'm being lit, especially as an older actor. I like to see the way I'm being lit because then I also, you know, I also feel like physically no stand-in, no matter how much they watch my performance, can do what I'm going to do physically. And I just save us time. They didn't know anything about directing actors when we first started on Blood Simple. And I think that they really were fortunate in working with people like Emmett Walsh and Danny Hedaya because they had a lot of experience. And so it was more about corralling their energy into a specific place. But I also think that Joel and Ethan's scripts read like dramatic literature, and they tend to cast people who have theatrical backgrounds because they deal with heightened reality. So they often work with actors who have that theatrical careers and have a language that they speak to. Part of the way that they direct actors is technically. They don't ask you how you feel. They don't talk about a psychological arc to a character. It's not necessary because if you learn the lines and you read the script, 3/4 of your work is done. What I ask for and what they often are able to give actors is you need to say that line faster. You need to pick up the pace of the scene. You need to say the line slower. And it's easier for them just personally as people than talking about how characters feel or what the psychological truth is.
Opal?
Boy, we'll lock this door. A lot of nuts out there.
Another thing that I appreciate as an actor and what I'm always looking for in the filmmakers that I work with is someone who understands that it is an editor's medium. It's not a director's medium, it's not an actor's medium, it's not a writer's medium. At the end of the day, it has to be edited into a film. And they start editing the film the minute they put it on the page. So directing their actors, we trust them because we know that they're already making our performance an edited version of the performance while they're directing us on a set. Blood Simple not only started my career as an actor, but it also started my life with Joel Cohen. So our collaboration as both professional collaboration and personal, private collaboration has grown from that first time. I don't recommend it for all directors and actors. I think it's, and we felt very conflicted about beginning our relationship that way, but 32 years later, turned out okay. But one of the things that we both given each other is I've got a different perspective on a filmmaker's life, and he's got a different perspective on an actor's life. One of the things he's taught me, and he taught me very early, there's a lot of rejection that goes along with the job of being an actor. And I would come home from auditions distraught about my feeling of my lack of self-worth in those situations. And he would say to me, really at the end of the day, the only power an actor has is saying no. And that gave me a lot of confidence and power in situations. And most importantly, he said, when you go into that room, you have to understand that the people waiting for you in that room want you to be the last person they have to meet. Not just that day, but for the role. They want you to be it, so that you've got a lot to offer them. They're not the ones offering you something. You're the one offering them something, which was really, really helpful. And also that you can't always be right. It can be as simple as being too short, too tall, too fat, too thin, too light, too dark, that those things matter in a film in a way that they don't necessarily matter on stage, but they matter in a film. You could just be simply too tall.
Lover boy ought to lock the door. I love you. That's a stupid thing to say, right?
I love you too.
It wasn't so much that people saw Blood Simple and my work in it and thought that I could do anything else. If anything, actually, most people thought I was from Texas and that they met me there and left me there. It wasn't until Fargo that anyone knew that Joel and I were a couple. Even though they wrote parts for me and I was subsequently in other films, I was just a member of the company. Many of us, John Turturro and John Goodman, Holly. So, if anything, I think it started my film career for me. I got a taste for it. I wanted to do more of it. I wanted to work with them. Every time they write a script, I ask if I'm in it so I can get my disappointment out of the way or be thrilled that I am. There is a story that I love to tell about Blood Simple, and that kind of illustrates how little Joel and I knew about filmmaking and actors on film. And it also illustrates the beginning of our collaborative relationship, both professionally and privately.
I think someone's watching.
So what'll they see?
Just leave it off. You can see in.
You do anything, the neighbors will hear.
We were filming one of the segments of the last part of the film where Abby and Ray believe that Marty is chasing them.
Abby, I'm in it.
And the scene that we were filming was right in the middle of that, where Abby has just watched Ray being shot dead in front of her through the window. and she thinks it's Marty. And she runs into the bathroom to hide and subsequently hears his footsteps coming into the apartment. And the first part of this sequence that we shot was me running into the bathroom, and then just a close-up of me listening to his footsteps coming down the hall. So I show up for work, I'm having a cigarette and a cup of coffee and joking around with everybody. And then Joel explained the first thing we were going to do, and I realized it was in the middle of, she had to be hysterical. She had to be at a point of, it was at the high peak hysterical point of the arc of this sequence. And I thought, oh, I don't know how to do that. I've never done that before. But I had just done, in the last year of drama school, I had worked on a new play, and the director had wanted me to get to a certain point of hysteria. And she'd had one of the other actors, a male actor, hold me from behind and said, I want you to struggle until I tell him to let you go. And when I think you're at the right place, emotionally and psychologically, I'll have him let you go. And it had worked. It pissed me off so bad. So I looked around the set. There was Tom, the head grip, who was the oldest of the crew. He was 40 at the time. And I said, Tom, I have a favor to ask you. Yes, ma'am, he said. I said, I want you to hold me from behind. I'm going to struggle until Joel says action, and then you let me go. He didn't question me at all. He did it repeatedly for about 10 times. Joel and Ethan never questioned what I was doing. We finished that part of the scene, and then I realized that that's what we were doing the rest of the day, were different parts of that scene. So I said to Joel, I'm gonna crawl under the table over there. And he said, okay. So I crawled under the table on the set, and I sat there trying to figure out how to maintain a certain level of hysteria for the rest of the day. And Jean would push a little Kleenex box underneath there, and I'd be like, then Joel would say, where's Fran? She's under the table. And he would crawl under the table, and he'd say, okay, you okay? Yeah, fine, I'm fine, yeah, I'm great. And he goes, okay, here's the next part we're gonna do. And then he would explain the next part. Then he would come out, and then he'd crawl in. Okay, we're ready, Fran. He never questioned that I needed to get on the table. He just assumed that's the way actors prepared or sustained their, and that served us well for 32 years. And I've learned that that's not necessary. He's learned it's not necessary, but we're both prepared for the possibility of crawling under the table at any moment.
Now, I don't know what the hell you two thought you were gonna pull off.